Welcome to
Hello,
Soul Conversations with Jenna and
Patty. Hi, everybody.
hello. Welcome to season 2, episode 2. Today, Patty and I will be talking about how to navigate the darkness and how to anchor into the light. What does that look like? How can we do it? And, with the times that we are navigating now and for the last 2 years, we both feel that Spirit has led us to have this conversation today. I mean, we planned on having a different conversation, right?
Yes, correct. We were actually going to continue the conversation we had from episode 1. And this morning I had texted Jenna and I said, hey, I really feel called to talk about some of the things that are happening now, some of the things that have been happening in the last few years, and really talk about what it means to navigate through the darkness and coming into the light, because we have experience in that. And as one of the intentions that we had for the soul conversations was to actually bring forth practical experience and practical knowledge and information and just tools to navigate through this thing we call life, spirituality, and everything that's going on in the world. So yeah, so as Spirit would have it, and as we always do, we listen to Spirit, and this is what the conversation they wanted us to have today. And I think that we're just going to allow Spirit to channel through us, and the intention is that we can be a clear conduit and channel to what Spirit wants to say at this time for this particular conversation, and be able to help anyone, support anyone trying to understand the chaos and the darkness that's happening in the world today. But first, shall we anchor in some energies so that we can ground, be present in the moment? So as with all soul conversations, we start with a grounding meditation. So I invite you now to close your eyes. Take a deep cleansing breath, allowing yourself to be present in this now moment, being present here with this conversation, being present to receiving the message that Jenna's soul has, that my soul has, being present in navigating what is happening in the world around us. I call in all of our guides, all of our angels, all of our spirit team, our soul family to surround us with a beautiful light of protection, that we may be a clear channel and conduit to the divine. Taking a nice deep breath from our heart space, placing our hand on our hearts, breathing into our hearts, feeling into any kind of spaciousness where we can anchor in and plug into the feelings of peace, the feelings of harmony, the feelings of love. And with every breath, anchoring in those energies into our body, that we may radiate peace, harmony, and love, and that we may magnify it and send it out to places, spaces, people, and time that need it the most. We anchor in love, we anchor in light, we anchor peace, we anchor in harmony in the space that I'm in, currently in New York and the East Coast. Anchor in this love, light, peace, and harmony in California, where Jenna is. Anchor in peace, light, and harmony, and spreading it out across the world, allowing this energy to flow through time and space, that it may reach the places and spaces and people that need it the most. Sending everyone love, sending everyone light, sending everyone peace, sending anyone expansions of harmony within their body, within their environment, within the events that are happening now. And with every breath, we anchor this in. We anchor it to Mother Gaia. We anchor it in now, allowing our guides and angels to take this energy and spread it to anywhere and anyone that needs it the most. A few more deep breaths in this time, in this space. Anchor in that love, anchor in that light, anchor in the peace, anchor in the harmony. In your time, in your own space, come back to the present moments, come back to the here and the now, come back to soul conversations with Jenna and Patty. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that is sort of just a little snippet of what it means to really anchor in those energies with intention, with focus, and with a clear heart, an expansive heart. And sending that out into the world.
Yeah, that was so good and so needed. I just love, starting our show off with, some very intentional grounding. And it's almost like just kind of not escaping, but just moving into almost a different reality for a short moment in time. And the stillness and the mindfulness and the communion. It just feels so good. So thank you for leading us.
You're welcome. And it's really creating that portal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we talked about this the other day. I said something like, at every moment we can choose and pivot to interrupt cycles and patterns that no longer serve us. And being able to anchor in to this time and this space and anchor in those energies is really that pivot that we're finding in any given moment. But for now, in this time and space, to create this portal of love and portal of beautiful conversations so that we can share what our hearts are wanting to share. So, down to business, down to navigating the darkness.
I mean, I feel like we should kick it off. I feel like we should kick it off with, because I always talk about this with spiritual, non-spiritual, identifying friends, and I speak of the darkness. And sometimes I get the question, what do you mean by the darkness? Like, what does that mean?
Perfect.
So I feel like let's start with that. I mean, what does the darkness mean to you?
So me, darkness means a few things. Darkness is when I am not in alignment with my soul, where there is just chaos and confusion in my mind and in my body and in my world. So my inner world being chaotic is reflective of what's happening outside of me that is also essentially ending up chaotic. Darkness to me is also the chaos around the world, what is happening in the collective, what's happened in the collective in the last 2 years, what's happening in the collective now. Darkness also doesn't necessarily to me mean evil. Darkness also is things that are hidden, things that need to come to the light, things that need love the most. So I think that that's sort of part of what I believe darkness is.
Yes, I have the same, I feel the same way about all of those, definitely when I feel like, something is pulling me out of alignment of my soul's journey, or interfering with, this forward movement of my path. I'm like, that's the darkness. I'm gonna stay away from that and
Yeah.
anchor into the light. And
Yeah.
I feel like we experience darkness on a personal level, but we also experience it on a collective level.
Yeah.
And I love how you brought up the hidden as well, because that brings in, the light. The light is, shown on the earth to uncover that which is hidden, that which is deceitful, that which is evil. And, there's so many definitions to the darkness. It's not
Mhm.
like a physical darkness, and sometimes it is,
Mhm.
but it's more also like a spiritual darkness and an energetic darkness. And I mean, for me, the darkness is just pretty much anything that is preventing me or humanity from reaching the ultimate goal, right? Which is like a sovereign, to be a sovereign being or a sovereign humanity, to have that unity and harmony and peace and sustainability that, we all are worthy of and deserve. And, anytime that something interferes with that, or seems to be pulling away from that, that's not the direction I want to go. And I feel that's not the direction we should go as a collective. We want to move towards the light. So then, now the next question, what is the light?
For me, at least the light, and again, ask me what the light was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. No clue. Absolutely no clue. But in the last few years where I've anchored into a lot of the healing, I've anchored into a lot of what it means to be in the darkness and what it means to be in the light, ultimately. And I think we talked about this last episode. Ultimately, the light is love. Ultimately, is the light is where God lives. And ultimately, the light is where God lives within us so that we can show up as that and anchor that in. And anything outside of that is really a distortion and an illusion and false, right? Anything that is not of the light is not real, because the only thing that is real is God and it's love. But it does take a while to get to that place. It does take a while to get to that level of understanding. And even though I have that understanding, I know there's more that needs to be revealed through that. And the only way to reveal more of that is to go into the darkness. So there's a saying, and the interesting part, I actually tattooed it on myself. It's not, I didn't tattoo the saying on myself, but I tattooed the saying. The further we are pulled into the darkness, the further we are propelled into the light. And in order for us to understand what the light is, we need to understand the duality, which is dark. And again, I said it earlier, dark is not necessarily bad. It's what the darkness represents and what the intention of that darkness is. Because sometimes, when you and I went through our dark night of soul, I'm going to plug this a little bit because we have season 1. I forgot which episode it was. I think it's episode 3, Dark Night of the Soul. Watch that so you understand what the Dark Night of the Soul is. But through that darkness, we were able to really come into this beautiful understanding of where we are now. And it took a lot of self-awareness and healing to get there. And you were saying earlier about the collective darkness and the personal darkness. And you had mentioned it earlier about the Pluto return. So I think if you want to kind of explain a little bit more about Pluto return, which is happening right now as we're recording this is what, February 20, I don't know. What is it now? February 20 something, 2022. Pluto return just happened. But that is sort of a little bit of a example of what a collective dark could look like. So you want to walk everyone through what that is.
Yeah, of course. But first I want to kind of highlight, because I did say earlier, and you're absolutely right. Like sometimes we do have to go through the darkness, and obviously we want to avoid the darkness, but sometimes we can't. It is part of our our mission and our path to go through it. Because, when we go through and we become comfortable with going through the darkness, that's where our growth happens. That's where we collect strength and wisdom and knowledge to move forward during these times of struggle. So if we were always in the light, we'd never stretch, and we'd never grow, and we'd never learn how to deal with these difficulties. So I do want to retract my avoiding, and I do support
Yeah.
your statement of going through the darkness. And you just mentioned the Pluto return, and I think that's a perfect example of how now, individually and collectively, we are kind of being forced to go through the darkness together, which is kind of a beautiful thing, because oftentimes when we reach our dark night of the soul, or it's a very lonely journey, and sometimes we can reach out for support and sometimes we can't. And now we are literally walking through the darkness together, being forced to call on one another and to lean on one another and to support each other, because we are all feeling it on a collective level. We're all having to process it together. We're all having to fight together. And, this is an event that is unstoppable. Pluto return only happens every 248 years. So that means unless there is some insane technological advancement that helps us humans live longer than we are supposed to, this is an event that will happen once in our lifetime. And I find it very interesting that on 2/22/22, that Pluto made its return. That seemed to be the catalyst of a lot of major events happening in the world. And, all of this is on stage for everyone to see. We're all experiencing it. We're all having to process it. I feel like Patty was going to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify about the Pluto return. The Pluto return is really just for the US, for America.
No, that's true.
So, here in the US, we are experiencing a lot of that. As you mentioned, Pluto being death, rebirth. So I just want to point that out, that it's technically Pluto return is US Pluto return, but because again, everything that's happening in the collective here is amplified because of the fact that we are all connected anyway, right? So what happens up in the cosmos, as above, so below, happens here on Earth. What happens internally, as within, so without, is what's happening. What's happening internally is what's happening outside. So anyway, sorry to interrupt that, but I just want to point that out, that it is an America's Pluto return.
It is indeed the US's Pluto return.
Which is crazy.
At the same time, I feel that there is like cause and effect, right? And I definitely feel like due to things that are happening here, it is causing this kind of chain reaction, throughout the rest of the world. But here we obviously need to, there's systemic issues and old foundations that are long overdue for transformation. And I think that this is a transformation that we're experiencing, on a large scale, and a transformation that we're experiencing individually. So I think today we really just want to talk about, recognizing these times of transformation and, knowing how to walk through the darkness and go through that death gracefully. I like to go through my death gracefully and try to have like the best rebirth ever. So
I agree with all of that. Gracefully is really good. I think whenever we go through a death rebirth, we always have to pray for ease and grace, because a lot of us pray for strength. And of course, then then guess what? The universe is going to give you things to make you stronger. But I think I've learned that lesson that when we are going through this death rebirth, it's actually good to be intentional with our prayers of, please allow this to happen with ease and grace. But I want to talk a little bit about sort of that individual darkness that we go through and how we are able to navigate that, and in relation to what's happening in the collective. So we could look at the collective, we could look at the chaos that's happening in the world, we could watch the news, we could watch, we could judge everything that's happening with politics, we could hate on people because we have different views, or we get to stop, detox all that from our system, and come back inwards to ourselves to see how we, A, are showing up in those spaces and conversations, B, how we are able to be the change that we want to see in the world. So everyone loves that quote. Everyone wants to be the change, but yet I love that quote until I love that quote, but I did not understand that quote for a very long time. I loved it, and I was like, I don't know what that means to be the change. But when I finally went through my own dark night, I realized that it takes a lot of accountability to be that change, to no longer be in denial that I'm actually the one perpetuating the darkness, the chaos, the suffering within my own life by plugging into the collective versus focusing on me and focusing on what I needed to heal. So that's when the healing journey started. That's when the unraveling started. That's when the death started, the death of the old me, the death of the old way of thinking and doing and being, so that I can become this person who actually is more accountable for my own darkness, and how I can heal that, accept that, love all of that about everything, and then come back into the light. So that's for me at least, that experience of the individual dark was really about accountability, stop being in denial, healing, and understanding how I wanted to show up in the world to make the change and be the change. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense to me. And you always just say such wonderful things where I'm like making little notes in my head, like I want to circle back on this and I want to circle back on that, because you just make so many amazing points. But I love that you brought up that quote, be the change that you wish to see in the world. Who was that? Is that Brene Brown?
No, I'm pretty sure that was Buddha. Guys, in the notes, we're going to see who exactly said that quote. But
I feel like I have, hold on, I'm just.
We're doing a little research right now. I want to make sure it's real.
I said that. See, this is how the subconscious works. So I have my little vision board on my cell phone that I look at every day to kind of, help me subconsciously stay on track with the life I wish to have. And I have on my phone, you probably cannot see, but but I have on top Brene Brown.
Yeah.
With her saying something. And then underneath it says, be the change you wish to see in the world. So because I'm constantly looking at Brene and constantly.
I love her, by the way, Brene Brown.
Oh, it has to be Brene Brown.
I just Googled it. It's Gandhi.
Oh, Gandhi.
Mm-hmm. Be the change you wish to see in the world. So, yes.
Awesome.
So Gandhi was the one who was originally quoted in saying that. But such a good quote when you actually practice it.
It really is,
Just know it.
And it's a question, especially now that I feel we need to continue to ask ourselves, because we are literally living in a time where we really need to begin creating that change that we wish to see in the world. But it starts with us. And that's why I loved what you said earlier, is sometimes we look to the collective, we kind of plug into the narrative, and that kind of halts us from doing our own work. But all the change that we wish to see, it starts on a personal level, you know? And that's something that took me a long time to understand. Many of us are raised with many different complexes. For me, it was the savior complex. I really wanted to save the world. And I didn't think that I needed to start with myself. I was just always seeking where there were problems in the world and thinking that I could contribute in some way without doing my own inner healing first, and thinking like, I have the tools because I have a heart that cares and wants to, create that change. But I didn't even know what that looked like. I had no vision around it, no clarity. I had not done any work. I just had a good heart. And many of us have good hearts and we want to see that change and create that change. But if we haven't, done that work within ourselves first, really we're just, I don't want to say wasting our time, but a little bit, like in the harshest way, because sometimes when we think that we're helping, we're actually creating more conflict because we're not coming from a place of clarity or, oh, sorry, I keep catching this like
I love it though.
on
It's
my,
very
yeah.
sparkly and like angelly.
Yeah,
I'm into it.
thank you. I'm getting excited
It's
every time
God
I
saying
see it
yes,
light up.
yes. Continue that. Continue that.
Shimmy.
Continue what you were saying.
Yeah, so I just wanted to highlight and echo what you were saying about, doing some, it's okay to unplug. I say it's okay to unplug from the narrative and focus on yourself, because, that's why this awakening time is so important, because individually we're starting to see people do their work, on a personal level, and that's creating massive global collective change. And it's a beautiful thing to see. And the more that we prioritize ourselves and creating our own inner transformation, we will begin to see it manifest on a larger scale. And that ultimately is the goal, as we all change our hearts and lock into the vision of light and love and peace and good. If we all hold that vision on a personal level, then we can come together and actually create momentous change. And, that's what I love to see.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up, because you connected with me, connected with someone else who has the same intentions of love, peace, and harmony, who has the same intent, who is connected to someone who has intentions of peace, love, and harmony. Together, we kind of create a grid. And then wherever we are in the world, it doesn't matter if you're in California and I'm in New York and someone else whose intentions are peace and harmony, we all connect to that and plug into that narrative. And that's when we can anchor in more light. It's all energetics. Energy knows no bounds of time and space. So I think from an more esoteric level, that's sort of where we plug into. And, the reason why we don't plug into the other narrative is because we have a choice. We can choose, like, honestly, we do have a choice. We can choose to plug into the old narrative, or we can choose to pivot and plug into a new narrative that is more serving to us as an individual, because we don't want to be in suffering. We don't want to be perpetuating trauma. And we can also plug into the things that bring more harmony into our lives and into the collective and into the world. And the first step really in understanding, or not understanding, but the first step in really plugging out of the darkness so that you could see the darkness from just a different level, is to honestly plug out of media, plug out of the collective fear-based consciousness, plug out of all of the distortions that are being perpetuated. You said something earlier, and I just want to make sure I recall this properly. We were talking about healing, and you were talking about we need to plug out of that narrative so that we can plug into ourselves to start to heal. And the reason for that is because that narrative is steeped in trauma. It's steeped in unhealed wounds. And so the healing really is imperative in this journey so that we are not operating from unhealed wounds and trauma.
Yeah. I love how thorough you are, my sister. I feel like Patty always comes in and breaks it down. So
I think it's how my brain works and like how I'm able to process.
I love that about you. That's why I'm so happy to do this with you, because you just go in and you you make it like spirituality 101 for dummies, just like we're gonna hit every point and make sure you understand it. Yeah, so it's such a blessing that you operate that way.
And I like that we are both complementary of each other though. So like, yeah, I get you. I get everything that you're saying.
I love that. I hope so.
And everyone who's watching this now, I hope you are following and understanding. And if there's honestly anything within this conversation that's sort of like, what the hell are they talking about? Feel free to reach out to us on Instagram. Feel free to reach out to us at any point, because we can provide more clarity. But to anyone who does understand what we're talking about, we invite you to have these conversations in your own circles, because these conversations are really, really important to have, because there are a lot of people who are navigating through the darkness and they don't understand that the darkness is necessary, and the darkness was it was by design. It was by divine design, and that it's not bad. It's just necessary for our growth and evolution.
Yeah.
To come back to love.
Yeah. And just going back to the grace, because the darkness can manifest in so many different ways in our life. It can look like depression, and it can look like anxiety, and it can look like panic attacks, and it can look like just being stuck in an endless narrative or loop of negativity that just feels impossible to get out of. And oftentimes when we are stuck under that cloud of darkness, we begin to really believe the things that are, going on in our bodies and going on in our head. And, I always imagine whenever these things start popping off all at once or together, there's kind of like another version of me behind me with the whip, just saying like, you got to get through this, you got to get up, and it just feels very harsh, which makes me just want to go deeper into that depressive state. And I think it's very important to just be kind to ourselves and to understand that grace is available to us, and to really deepen the connection with, your soul, our soul, and our highest self. And to realize that we do have a lot of support around us, whether it's your friends or, someone you feel that you can confide in, but also the spirit realm, your God and your angels and your ancestors are here to support you. And, you can always call on them. And you'd be amazed. Oftentimes people say, oh, well, I don't feel like that works for me. But have you really tried it? Because I know for a long time, people would give me this kind of advice or say these things, and I'd be like, yeah, but it doesn't work. But I really never deepened into the connection with myself. And it was when I prioritized that and really wanted to become curious about how connected I really am to the source energy, that this incredible magic began to happen in my life, and this incredible wisdom became available to me. And now I just have this unshakable faith and understanding that even in the darkest of times, that there is a path for my life that moves beyond that. And that, all I need to ask and you shall receive. And I've asked, and sometimes it doesn't come immediately, but I hold steady in my faith that the grace that I've asked for is coming to me and that it will reveal itself in many forms, whether it's just meeting a new group of people that make me feel comforted and at home, or just, that I think once we understand that these things that we ask for can manifest in such different forms, it's not like just the thing that we ask for is going to reveal itself in front of us in 2 seconds, but spirit, God, the universe provides, like, moves things around so that the right person will meet you in your moment, or that book, that has the paragraph in it that just seems to change your life, or what I'm saying. And it's important to, lean into that connection and look for it, because it will be revealed, but it's up to us to make ourselves available to it and want to receive it, because grace and blessing is always there if we open ourselves up to receiving it.
I agree. So you said grace, magic, and faith. I really think those are great energies to calibrate to when we are in that darkness. And if we can't calibrate and find that within ourselves, we can always go to, as you said, God, and pray for that. Pray for grace, pray for the magic to be seen, and pray for more faith. And that alone will help us navigate through the darkness. Because you said it earlier, it's like when we're in that darkness, it's a karmic cycle, it's a karmic loop, it's a karmic pattern. And I know when I was deep in my darkness, I've shared a little bit of my story. Season 1. Look at those. You'll see the dark side of the soul. I shared a little bit of my story, but when I was in that deep, dark night, my own individual deep, dark night, that's exactly what was happening. It was literally every single day that I woke up, it was the same narrative. It was the same conversation that I was having in my head, until finally one day I broke down and I couldn't do it anymore. And I asked for grace, and I asked for more faith, and I asked for magic and miracles to come into my life. And, you had said, one day you'll see a post, one day you'll open a book, and one day, and that's exactly what happened. When I opened myself up to the desire to heal, to the desire to come out of the darkness, that's when things started to change. And I know how difficult it is to be in the darkness. I know how difficult it is to unplug from the narrative of the collective, because chances are you're probably surrounded by people that are only plugged in. You're probably surrounded by the same old stories. And that's what keeps us in the darkness, whether it's individual, whether it's what's happened in the collective, whether something happened a year ago, whatever is happening now, whatever is going to happen tomorrow, there is going to be darkness to be faced and to have to move through. But we have the opportunity now to really tap into, as you said, there's so many people out there that we can call on. There's so many people out there. If they're not within your circle of friends or family, I promise you there are other people out there, i.e. Jenna. Hi, I'm Patty. Soul Conversations. And there are other light workers out there that you can plug into instead of the media narrative, instead of the old narrative. Plug into something new, something better, something nourishing. And show yourself that love and compassion, that you are worthy of navigating through the darkness with ease and grace.
Yes. And that was beautiful, but I love what you said about don't always pray for strength, pray for grace and ease, because you're so right. And I feel like we're kind of trained. I mean, I remember when I used to, go and drink too much, and I'd be over the toilet the next day. God, Please help me to get through this. Give me strength. I mean, it just seemed like it was like the default
Yeah.
for a lot of people. God, I promise I won't, if you help me get through this moment, I won't do it again. Anyway, I have learned that the more that I did pray for strength, the more that I was met with difficult moments to get through that, or to get through anything. And that's such a great point. I mean, so, when you ask for help, when you're going through a difficult
Be
time,
very specific.
be very specific.
And intentional.
I never ask for strength anymore.
Neither do I.
I'll ask God to strengthen my faith. Please strengthen my faith.
Love
but
that.
I won't say give me strength. I will say give me grace, give me ease, give me support, help me to feel supported through this difficulty, so that I can overcome or so that I can endure. But I kept thinking about that, and Patty is so right, because sorry, a very loud car just went by home. Kind of threw me off.
Yeah.
But anyway, my point is, yes, be very specific in the things that you ask for, because it will show up.
It will actually absolutely give you strength.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's very difficult. Yeah. Well, I will tell you, all of 2021, all of last year, I prayed for strength. And literally, and I prayed for healing. So that's another thing. I prayed for strength and healing. And I went through a massive purge and darkness that allowed me to have more strength and heal, but it was rough. I'm not going to lie. It was really, really rough. So this year, when we talked about in the last episode, I was praying for expansion, and it's been so much more graceful as to the healing, because the healing naturally occurred when I anchored in more expansion of light. So yes, we could probably, I don't even ever want to say the word bypass. I don't think we could ever bypass the darkness to go straight into the light, but know that both are available and accessible. It's just a matter of what we choose.
Right.
And the natural path and the natural journey will be having to go through the darkness into the light. But now, as we speak, you kind of maybe hopefully know that there is a light to get to and anchor into.
We can go straight to the light, right? I mean,
if we can go straight to the light,
I'll buy that ebook. How to get straight to the light.
I know there is no magic pill. I mean, no. There really is no magic pill. And how can I even express this? So when it comes to the darkness of the collective, we can't control that darkness. We can't control politics. We can't control what is happening in the world around us. The only thing we can control is how we respond to the world around us. And the only thing we can control is how we want to show up for the world around us. And that's a really good question to ask yourself. Like, with everything going on in the world right now at this moment, how do you choose to be the change? And how do you choose to be a warrior? Are you going to go out there and picket? Are you going to go out there and join the convoys? Are you going to go out there and have arguments with people about left, right, up, down? Are you going to have arguments, or are you going to step back and say, okay, well, I can't control that. What can I control? What do I need to heal within myself so that I can show up and anchor in more love and light, and more sustainable love and light, rather than the love and light that lives here, only here, but the love and light that actually is fully embodied in our being, that we're just literally showing up as that. Did I explain that correctly? I don't know if I explained that correctly.
You did. I understood it perfectly. Um, and I think, the one thing that I always tell myself, the more that we go towards the light, the more that we're able to see and recognize the darkness. And that's really how I know that I'm heading the right direction, because I can see both. I know I'm heading towards the light. I'm seeing all of this darkness reveal itself. But the more we head towards the darkness, the less you can see the light, because the darkness, it gets to a point where it becomes just so consuming. There's nothing empowering about being in the darkness. There's nothing revealed in the darkness. So, well, actually there's a lot revealed in the darkness, but
but the light needs to shine onto it, right?
Yeah. So I think that, as the more that you see the light, the more you recognize the darkness, and you begin to use that. I begin to use that, at least, to navigate where I need to go. I'm starting to see, oh, this is for me, this is not. This will support me, this won't. This is pulling me up, this is pulling me down. So and like you said, the darkness is sometimes unavoidable. I mean, it is unavoidable, but it's just important to recognize what is light and what is darkness. I'm happy that we talked about what is that, because oftentimes a lot of people don't even recognize what darkness is and what light is. So hopefully that shed a little light.
No pun intended. Yes, lots of puns intended.
I love a pun.
A little bit. Yeah. And hopefully that shed a little bit of light on what it means to navigate these times of darkness.
Yeah. So now I feel like we should discuss, what does anchoring into the light look like?
Ooh, anchor into the light.
So many different ways, to do that. And I feel like there's a point where you just kind of feel called to different ways to anchor into the light.
Yeah. I mean, we could literally talk about different modalities. Yeah. I mean, we could have another whole conversation about that. But I think, just to simplify it for this particular conversation, what we did earlier in the meditation, that's an example of anchoring in the light. Meditation is a really beautiful, powerful way to create intention and reach different areas of the world, different people, through the power of intention. So that's, I think, one of the most beautiful ways to anchor in the light. But the other piece of that is, how do you, so when I said earlier, anchor in the light, light to me means love. So how can you bring more love into your personal experience? How can you bring more love into your own practices for yourself, meaning self-love, and anchoring in that in and embody it, versus just knowing that we know how to love, and actually showing that we know how to love are two different things. What to say, love is a verb, not a word. Love is action. So I think that's a really beautiful way to anchor in that light, is to really just show compassion and love and empathy towards people, towards yourself and people around you. And that creates a ripple effect of love, peace, and harmony across anywhere you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And, I feel like as time goes by, I'm learning more and more ways to anchor into that light, and more and more ways to just even receive on how I can anchor in deeper, kind of send that energy out into the darkness. And the more that we practice, the more is revealed, and how our vessels can be used to create these changes, and how to use the light. So it's very exciting, but like you said, I do feel it is a very expansive topic.
Yeah.
So I think that you pose some wonderful questions for people to ponder and think about, and we should definitely discuss it more in another episode.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, before we end today, there are those questions, self-reflections that we could leave everyone with. And one is, when you think about darkness, what does darkness mean to you? That's one. Two, what does light mean to you? Same questions that you just asked me, really. What does darkness mean to you? What does light mean to you? And how can you navigate through the darkness that's happening in the collective, meaning in the world, the people, places, things around us, versus the darkness within ourselves? And how can we anchor in that light within ourselves so we can share that out into the world and be the change? I think those are, yeah. Might take some time. Take some time to ponder those questions. Write them down in your journal.
Yes.
Come back to us.
However you want to ponder on it, process it, think about it. I'm a big fan of journaling, so I would recommend just writing those questions in your journal and just taking time to really think about it. And especially when it comes to anchoring in the light, just having a little fun and like practicing anchoring in the light, and finding like what feels comfortable for you, because one way for one person might not be, we mentioned meditation, but I understand that some people struggle with meditation and that might not feel like the way to do it. But it's, there's many different ways, and you'll have to just stay tuned, because we will definitely be talking about different ways to anchor in the light in future episodes.
Yeah. Well, we thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this episode. We are now season 2, episode 2. So, 2. I like that. I like those numbers. But thank you so much for joining us. This has been a beautiful conversation. This is Soul Conversations with
Jenna
and Patty. Would really, really appreciate it if you would watch some of the episodes that we've had. Note that those episodes were actually recorded this time last year. So all those conversations are very, very relevant still. But we're slightly different people from that. We had a lot of death rebirths from that point and a lot of dark nights from that point. But yeah, so watch those episodes, subscribe, like, share, all the good things to send us some love. Anchor in that light. Send us some love. We'll send you some love. Have a beautiful day, beautiful afternoon, beautiful evening. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In love, light, and gratitude. Thank you. Bye.